Good evening, everybody. As we were originally talking before we get on the air, they're talking about how great their bracket is. You didn't come here for my predictions. I have one team left in my Final Four. These two have three. Listen to them. I'm just going to host. I'm the guy who has the one. I'm Stephen Rabinowitz.
And I'm Jay Kaplan.
He has the three.
And I'm Anthony Strait, and I also have 3 of my 4 teams still remaining.
Fucking braggers. Sorry about that. This is the Sweet 16 NFL free agency edition of On the Sports Lines. The quickest curse, by the way, that we've ever had in the history of this show. Away with the opener. We're going to talk all about the analysis of a lot of stuff. We're going to talk free agency for the Jets, for the Giants, and the rest of the National Football League a little bit later on. But first, guys, let's go back to the madness. Yeah, you say it all every year, but just say it again to let us know what we're in for.
Craziest tournament ever.
Correct. In this year's Sweet 16, a quarter of the field are double-digit seeds. We still have three number 1 seeds left. Yeah. We have our second number 15 seed making it this far. And oh yeah, the return of the world's most irresistible crush, the most badass 101-year-old on the planet, Sister Jean. So let's take a look at this weekend's matchups, and we're going to take a top-line look at each of the 8 games because they're all standalone. Nothing is competing against each other. It's actually on Saturday and Sunday. It's kind of cool. Let's start with the West. Jay will start us off with the overall number 1 Gonzaga, taking on, if you could believe it, a first-time Sweet 16er in Creighton. What are we looking for?
You know, the Creighton team we've seen over, these first 2 games of the NCAA tournament is more like the Greg McDermott teams we're used to seeing, as opposed to the one that got their asses handed to them in the Big East final against Georgetown. The best way for them to stay with Gonzaga is to play at a slower tempo, more of a half-court, grind-out possession style of ball that slows down the game, creates less possessions overall, and potentially keeps the game close. Here's the problem with that. It goes diametrically opposed to the actual style and Creighton's offensive DNA. Like Gonzaga, the Blue Jays like to get out, run, play at the same up-tempo pace style of ball as the Zags. Now, if they're hitting threes like they did against Ohio, they were 9 of 21 from deep, and winning the points in the paint battle, they were plus 10 in that area against Ohio, then they are a tough out, even against the Zags. But when you're going against a lineup where any member of the starting 5 can go off and take over a game, like small forward Corey Kispert did in round 1 when he dropped 23 on 8 of 12 shooting, 6 of 9 from deep, or center Drew Timme, who had a career-high 30 on 9 of 12, plus 12 of 14 at the stripe with 13 boards and 4 assists in round 2. This team can score the ball at all 3 levels at a proficiency rarely seen in college basketball. They lead the nation in effective field goal percentage at 61%. And they get on the glass, they get into the passing lanes on defense, and they don't turn the ball over. You almost have to play a perfect game to beat them. Now, granted, this may be the best defensive team that McDermott has had in his tenure at Creighton. They rank number 32 in the nation in efficiency. But even that, plus a great shooting night, may not be enough to derail a Gonzaga team that has now won 32 straight dating back to last season, 25 straight by double digits. No one has enough firepower to stay with them. You have to hope that one of them, particularly Timme, as he's their best and only real big man, either get into foul trouble early or foul out late in a close game or get hurt, forcing Mark Few to go to a bench that has not seen a lot of minutes this season. If all of that comes together, then maybe Creighton has a chance to knock off the Zags, but don't hold your breath.
There's a lot of mitigating factors for Creighton. They've done a decent job, like in games against Villanova earlier this year. They blew the doors off of them. Creighton also has to get off to probably the hottest start possible. And yeah, I think, again, as we've said before, Gonzaga has to play their worst game because if they're on the ball,
and you have to play better than your best.
Yes.
You need that confluence of events. And if you don't get it, you're going home.
Although we said that about Illinois, and as we saw, they played their worst at the worst possible time, and Loyola just played their game. We'll get to that in a little bit. I have the other game in this weird bracket. This is actually a normal bracket compared to some of the others we're going to see.
Yeah.
And let's talk about the Conference of Champions. Sorry.
Thank you, Bill Walton.
Bad impression there. So the Pac-12 has been a beast in the past in college basketball history. Look at the Arizona great teams. Look at the UCLA great teams in this tournament. But recently, they're not at the same level. The Pac-12 has had 4 victories in the last 2 tournaments. And as we talk about Oregon and USC, this postseason, the Pac-12 has had 10 victories. There are only 2 conferences with multiple teams in the Sweet 16. The SEC, minorly good year for them, and the Big East, a league that we thought was completely down. Yeah. There were 5 Big Ten teams left in round 2, 6 Big 12 teams left in round 2, and then a lot of them lost. There were only 5 second-round games where a Big 10 or a Big 12 team didn't lose. Each of those conferences are down to 1. So in this Pac-12 slobber job that I've just given them, we're talking about Oregon, USC, the 7 and 6 seeds in the region. Oregon and USC were amazing in their first weekend. In their second-round matchup, the Trojans jumped out to a 23-12 lead over Kansas when Evan Mobley just went insane. Closed with 11 straight points to end the first half, and they just never stopped piling on the Jayhawks the rest of the way. I know Jay was talking about how the Jayhawks could surprise a little bit in the tournament, especially 2 weeks ago. That did not happen. No. Isaiah Mobley, the other Mobley in the family, has now stretched together his best 2-game stretch of the season. Had 17 points, 8 rebounds, and 4 assists in that game against Kansas. Evan had his usual nice line, 10 points, 13 rebounds, 5 assists, and 3 blocks. Cade Cunningham, who? Think about this guy as your number 1 pick. Isaiah White, 13, Taj Eddy, 12. They just mopped the floor, and USC is probably playing their best basketball of the year. Now, Oregon only had 1 real matchup because, unfortunately, they had a no contest when VCU could not make their protocols. Yes, it's still a no contest. Calm down there, buddy. Chris Duarte had 23 points in that game. The Ducks were just – it's in a tournament where we've seen so many slugfests and almost slog fests.
Nice to see a track meet, huh?
Or it was a track meet for the first half, and then Oregon was basically pre-fontaining the rest of the time around the course.
Nice reference
for the rest of the game. So this is an interesting matchup. These 2 teams finished 1-2 in the Pac-12 regular season standings, and USC was a little pissed. They were 15-5 in the conference. They played a 20-game schedule, won their only meeting with Oregon easily, 72-58. But the Ducks were 14-4, and because 14-4 is a better winning percentage than 15-5, Oregon won the regular season title, and USC thought they got their title stolen from them, said by Isaiah Mobley. I don't want to say necessarily that they got lucky. They're a good team, but they stole the Pac-12 championship from us. These 2 teams match up well, and this will be the final game of the weekend. It'll be a nice Sunday night 9:45 game. I think these 2 teams are going to put on a classic. Ironically enough, I ended up picking up the 2 games that are both rematches of games that happened earlier this year. And we say that there are going to be no rematches because, non-conference games did not exist. All right, guys, let's move on to the South. Villanova has to be the most shocking number 5 seed to ever get this far. Almost everyone had them losing their first round game, including us. But Jay Wright, well-dressed and handsome as he is, former Hofstra alum, shout out Hofstra, gets the rejuvenated Baylor Bears in the regional semifinals. Anthony, our thing to watch is what?
You know, it's ironic because Villanova is one of the teams that I picked the battle out early, and they're the only team of the teams I picked last week that is still hanging around. Look, the way they looked at the college last week went down, they looked like they were just ripe for an upset, but they played very well in the 2 games against Winthrop and North Texas, and they are for the 3rd time in the last 5 seasons. They're part of the field of 16, and Jay Wright has done a tremendous job. I mean, Jeremiah Robinson Earl has really stepped it up and taken it up to another level in Gillespie's absence in those 2 in the first and second round games. Now, look on the flip side, Baylor, with Ohio State getting knocked out, remember they're the 2, the path to the Final Four suddenly gets a little easier for Baylor. You think about this, Baylor is a tale of 2 different teams. There was a Baylor team that looked like the top team in the country, went 17-0, and then there's the team that kind of struggled to get their foot back on the gas pedal after a COVID pause. that cost them a stretch of 3 weeks almost. And Baylor started to look more like the team we saw in the first half of the season before that pause, where they shot 43% from the field from behind the arc and held their opponents to just a shade over 40%. Now they lit up Wisconsin, but here's the thing: they're going to have to work on their defense because Wisconsin shot a high percentage themselves, and that's something that going into the matchup against Villanova, Baylor has the advantage because they shoot a high percentage, but you have the three-headed monster of Butler, Teague, and Mitchell. That's going to happen. But Villanova is coming into this game with the 71st ranked defense in the country, which is probably the worst that any J-Wright Villanova team has been in quite some time. Yeah, and they have struggled shooting, stopping the outside shot. So I'm looking to see if Baylor can really keep it up, because part of the reason why they struggled after that COVID pause is playing so many games with so little practice time in between and getting a full week off, a full week to rest, to quarantine, to really get game plans in, really help the Bears in the first 2 games. Now they get more time to prepare for Villanova. So let's see if they can keep up the high percentage shooting from the outside. And if Villanova can play the best defense of the season and slowing them down, because right now this is like the real advantage for Baylor right now is that they have more of the scoring and the outside shooting. And Villanova has, even though they look good in the first 2 tournament games, that was really a weakness for them for much of the season, even when they were doing good and before Gillespie's injury.
Villanova was actually pretty much a top flight team when Gillespie was there. You could have easily seen him be a top 10 team in the nation. Experience is going to be a huge factor here. I think, again, you saw a couple of coaches who were on the higher seed lines kind of fail in their first real major test over the weekend. I want to see how Mr. Drew does, because this is a huge game for Baylor. Get this game. You get to the regional final, and who knows? I think this is still the second best team of the nation when they play at their best, bar none. And now on that side of the bracket with Illinois gone, this is I wouldn't say it's a cakewalk for them. You still got some tough names in there, like Houston, like Arkansas, but Baylor is the most talented team out of the right side of your bracket. This should be their spot to get into the final game.
Should be.
It should be a good game. They play at the Hinkle Fieldhouse Saturday evening, so definitely a lot of eyes to watch on this game.
Should be, but shoulds only happen on paper, and as we've seen, that means nothing. All right, so I got the other games, so then I can stop talking for the rest of the show. So we talked at our production meeting about a week ago Monday. And we were talking about players to watch in the South. I picked Moses Moody, and Moses Moody has had a very good first few games. He's looked like the best athlete on the court. If you saw the game against Texas Tech, he was just all over the place, going for 15.6 rebounds. But the stars on that team, Justin Smith played 38 minutes. Moody played all but 1 minute. Devontae Davis played 37 minutes, and it was a real slugfest versus Texas Tech. And Arkansas and Colgate played in the game that we kind of thought we would see at least for about 24 minutes. But Arkansas definitely got their battle scars to get to where they are now. And they're going to face the darling of the tournament, the second number 15 seed to ever make it this far, and that's Oral Roberts. Now, back to that production meeting. I took Moody, but then I'm like, you know what? There's this guy from Oral Roberts who leads the nation in scoring, but I don't know if he's going to make it another round to do anything. And of course, guess what? He did, because he led the charge against Ohio State. Actually, he didn't. Let's talk about Max Abmas on your paper, but pronounced A-S-M-A-S, Max Abmas from Oral Roberts. He is
Max Ace didn't miss.
Okay, wordplay is not accepted over here unless it is pre-approved, but you went rogue on that one.
That's been pre-approved by all the broadcasters who did his games.
Yeah, that is true, but it's cliche. Okay, so he reminds me a lot of the body of a Steph Curry, just because he's got that range that you don't ever really expect out of a college player from a school that a lot of people have never heard of. He's a sophomore. He's 6'1". He's 165 pounds. He led the country in scoring and backed it up versus the Urban Meyer connection in Ohio State and Florida. And he averaged 27 points in those first 2 games. That's 3 more than a season average. However, Kevin O'Banner, basically just took over himself. He had 29.5 points per game. Smith's ability to score at will and carve through defenses, though, was the reason why O'Banner got the shots that he did and got the opportunities that he did. And it really, as I said to Jay on Friday night, Smith sets the tone. O'Banner takes care of the rest. Yep. Smith has been able to get a 30 to 40 point game, and he's going to have to do that to beat Arkansas, because I know Arkansas had struggled a little bit offensively, especially late versus Texas Tech. But you have to assume that you're going to have to put up 70 to 80 points in that game to beat them. Now, remember, Oral Roberts and Arkansas, they played each other back in December, 87-76 game. Smith only had 11, very pedestrian. O'Banner 21, and Arkansas saw the combination of Justin Smith and Moses Moody get 40 total themselves. And when you have 3 other players in double digits, do the math, you're probably going to lose. Oral Roberts is a way better team than they were back then. We've never seen a 15 seed get to a regional final, but this is the year the craziness may continue. But remember, you have a lot of tape to see that second weekend, and Arkansas has tape of Oral Roberts from December. So it's going to be a tough task for ORU, but I think there's a lot of possibility that they can get the job done. All right, let's move on. Midwest time. Jay, let's talk about Houston at number 2 time in March. Jay, what are you seeing here?
Well, I'm going to amend that, Rabbi. And as you and I discussed on text, we do need to change our contractual March obligation from not sleeping on Tom Izzo in March. But I'm going to tweak this slightly. Don't tell Jim Boeheim he doesn't belong in the NCAA tournament.
Oh, can I add that to you? Can I add something to that to you? Don't be a blogger on the internet saying that Jim Boeheim doesn't belong in the NCAA tournament, or Jim Boeheim will embarrass you in said post-game press conference.
There you go.
It's a little bit to remember, but I'll email it to you later, or guys, to later on for contractual updates.
There you go. Because it seems like every season where this happens, the Orange wind up blowing up people's brackets. If Syracuse is a bubble team in early March, you can practically book a late season NCAA tournament run. If they're a double-digit seed, you can pretty much Sharpie the Orange into the Sweet 16. This is the 3rd time in the last 5 tournaments that Syracuse has gone from being a double-digit seed into the Sweet 16. The Orange are a ridiculous 9-2 in the NCAAs as a double-digit seed. In those 9 wins, they have beaten a 7 seed, a pair of 6 seeds, 2 number 3 seeds, and a 1 seed. Does this continue against Houston? That depends on 2 things that are very Syracuse in March: a hot shooting guard and their confounding 2-3 zone defense. Buddy Boeheim is the latest in a line of hot shooting guards that includes Jerry McNamara and Eric Devendorf, both of whom actually were very involved in turning Buddy Boeheim into Buddy Buckets. Over the last 9 games, Boeheim has been on fire, averaging 24 a game. He had a 26-point game, including 6 of 13 from downtown, in a 72-70 win over North Carolina on March 1st. And that game is likely what got Syracuse on the right side of the cut line and into the NCAA tournament. And his shooting has only gotten hotter from there. He's put up 55 points on 13 of 23 from downtown, shooting in the round 1 win over San Diego State and round 2 win over West Virginia. Tracking back to that North Carolina game, Boeheim has attempted an average of 11 threes per game and knocked them down at a 48.5% clip. And that includes a 2 of 10 stinker against Clemson. Now, as for that 2-3 zone, I said this to Rabbi, it doesn't matter how much film your coaches watch in the day between games or how obvious the spots are that you need to get players to in order to attack it. You cannot teach a team that has never seen the Syracuse zone how to defeat it in a single off-day practice or walkthrough. As one ACC assistant coach put it, and here's the quote, "If you think you're going to run your regular 2-3 zone offense against Syracuse, you might as well stay home." Here we go. You have 0 chance to beat them unless you can make like 15 threes. That's why they always make it to the Sweet 16. Zero prep time after game one. I know multiple coaches in the tournament who have said, yeah, we won great stuff against the zones. Okay. Then they put up a 20 spot in the first half. Game's over in the first 20 minutes. Here's the thing with Houston. They are number 11 in the nation in defensive efficiency. First in effective field goal percentage at 42.7%. That's defense. 12th in three-point defense at 29.3%. 12th in steal percentage at 12.3%. They're also second nationally in offensive rebound percentage at 39.7%, which could be the thing that helps them most against that Syracuse 2-3 zone. In a zone defense, there are no box out responsibilities. It puts the team on defense at a disadvantage when the ball goes up. Houston's going to need a healthy Duran Giroux in order to clamp down on Boeheim and company. The Cougars all glue point guard left the Cleveland State game in round one with a hip pointer. And while it didn't seem to hobble him too much against Rutgers, he scored 17 and added 5 rebounds, 2 assists, and a block. Houston is hoping that with almost a week off, their best defender will be good to go. Houston is also 5th in the nation in offensive rating, led by AAC Co-Player of the Year Quentin Grimes, who put up 22 in the Cougars' come-from-behind second-round win over Rutgers, which the rabbi is still mourning, after putting up 18 in their first-round win over Cleveland State. The Midwest's number 2 seed will need their best effort on both sides of the ball to end the Cinderella run of Buddy Buckets and the Arm.
Let's have a moment of silence for Rutgers and the big choke job that they did at the end of that game on Sunday night.
14-2 run by the Cougars to end that game.
Couldn't buy a bucket in the end, and they were pretty much for the middle 35 minutes of that game on top. By the way, a few things. Number one, Buddy Bucket, as tweeted by, and I hate to do it because I hate him, Darren Rovell on Twitter on Sunday night. Buddy Boeheim ruins the whole coach's son's narrative forever. And number two, Buddy Boeheim has made the 3rd most three-pointers ever for a player's first 2 games in an NCAA tournament. I'm not going to ask you guys because the names are very, very out there. Jeff Fryer of Loyola of Marymount in 1990. And a name that I remember very clearly, Brady Hayslip, 14 for Baylor in 2012. So this team, not as good defensively as they've been in past years for Syracuse, but when you shoot the lights out like they've done, you got a good possibility of maybe even seeing Syracuse in the Elite Eight again. Jim Boeheim will take your comments and shove them up your Anthony. Let's move on to Oregon State. Oregon State, number 12 in preseason Pac-12 polls, number 1 in your hearts. The number 12 Oregon State Beavers has made it to face the most blessed team, #blessed team, in the tournament. That's Loyola of Chicago, number 8 seed. What's the one thing for this matchup?
You know what? It's going to be sad that the clock is going to strike midnight on one of these Cinderella teams. It's just, because they're both great stories. But the thing about, I think experiment is going to have to stand out in this matchup. You think about this, Loyola State has been there, done that. It was just 3 years ago. They were the Cinderella team in the Final Four. By the way, Cameron Crutwood, Mr. Harmonica himself, agile, foot, nimble. What a performance he put on against Illinois. It did seem like at one point, anytime he got the ball, he was able to get whatever he wanted down in the paint against arguably the number 1 seed in that region. But here's the thing, Illinois, the Ramblers are actually favored in this game. So it's going to be interesting to see what Sister Jean's game plan is going to come up with this time around when the Ramblers are actually the favorite. They've done a great job being the underdog, but now that they're 6.5-point favorites and they're kind of the team that people expect to kind of win, how do they perform? Maybe the best thing that happened to this team was the Indiana bubble. You know, you go home, go back to the campus, and you get praise, so you mainly get to your head. So that may be the best thing. As far as Oregon State, this is a team that has literally just got hot at the absolute right time. A team that was picked to finish dead last in its own conference, ran the table, got into the tournament, and just pulled back-to-back upsets. Now, here's the thing. Do they have the most talented team? Absolutely not. But when you get the whole Tennessee and Oklahoma State to combine 30% shooting and 0.84 and 0.9 points per possession, respectively, you're going to give yourself a great opportunity to win a lot of games. And by the way, the game plan he had for Kate Cunningham was pretty good too. I mean, when you hold him to 24 points and he had to get 20 shots to get it, that's great defense in itself. And as I said, the Beavers are just hot at the right time. They don't have the most talented team in the field left, but they're allowing, and this is a team that allowed over 45% shooting for the season. So to be able to clamp down defensively at the right time is the reason why they are being able to get this far. Yep. And they're led by Ethan Thompson, who's a great versatile player who can score. So it's going to be, like I said, it's a matter of experience. Can Loyola Chicago's experience from what happened 3 years ago get them over the hump? Or, like I said, with the Beavers being with the Ramblers was 3 years ago, being a hot team at the right time, it's a matter of what's going to win out in this game. Is it going to be the experience or the hot hand?
Well, if you see the game against Illinois, by the way, after the performance, Loyola of Illinois is not a Cinderella. They kicked Illinois' tail.
Yeah.
Illinois was never really in that game.
No.
And one of the reasons for it, and I think this is the true X factor of this game, is one of their great scouts, Sister Jean. And if you heard the prayer on Sunday, I have it right here.
Prayer or scouting report?
Both. It's both. As we play for the Fighting Illini, we ask for special help to overcome this team and get a great win. We have to score early and make our opponent nervous. Started with a 9-2 run. We have a great opportunity to convert rebounds as this team makes about 50% of its layups and 30% of its 3 points. 28.6 3-point attempts, and the Ramblers out-rebounded them 31-27. Our defense can take care of that. My God, what inspiration Sister Jean is. I swear to God, there's going to be a movie made about her, and I am going to watch every second of it. Again,
did you see the meme I sent to you? What was it, yesterday, about being born the same day as Babe Ruth, basically going ham for the Boston Red Sox on the same day? I mean, I don't know if they can put Sister Jean's prayer, which was essentially a game plan worked to perfection against Illinois, into the Basketball Hall of Fame, but they really should consider it, because every day in that prayer, the Ramblers did to perfection. The fight alone I had, they literally struggled, especially in the second half of that game, getting anything offensively. I mean, it was just ridiculous. They trapped Io to the point where he turned the ball over more times than he shot in the second half. I mean, this like I said, if I was the Giants, New York Football Giants, we'll talk about them later on, and I needed a game plan for any team in the NFC East, I'm calling Sister Jean. I mean, no disrespect to any of the coaching staff, but when you prayer is spot on, that is probably the best thing I've seen this entire weekend. And to see the Ramblers follow it to a T, it's just the ice on the cake.
See, for me, guys, and you bring up what they did to Io DeSumo. I'm going to mix my superhero metaphor here, guys. I mean, even though with the mask he calls himself Batman, but I'm going to mix him. Here we go. The Ramblers turned Superman into Clark Kent. That pretty much sums it up.
Yes, they did. It was
and they turned Batman to Alfred, because that's pretty much what Io was reduced to at the end of the game.
Man, this has been a freaking crazy tournament. But the East bracket actually seems somewhat normal. Well, not really. A number 11 seed is in there, so no. Chuck is not there. But
almost.
Out of all of the matchups, you usually would have a 1-4 and a 2-3 in this round if you go to form. There's only one matchup that held to form this round, and Jay has it. Number 1, Michigan, and number 4, Florida State. What are we looking at here?
Well, I have to give Juwan Howard a lot of credit. Through their first 2 games, the Wolverines' first-year head coach figured out how to overcome the loss of senior forward Isaiah Livers. I said on our last show that Eli Brooks and Chaundi Brown would have to step up, and through Michigan's first and second round games, boy, did they ever. Brooks is the IQ glue guy. Brown is the selfless sixth man who does whatever is asked. And a nice tweak by by Juwan Howard, leaving. I thought Brown would step into the starting lineup to replace Livers in order to not throw off the rotation. He kept Brown in his sixth-man role and put a nominal starter in Livers' spot. Against a dangerous LSU squad, they both went for 21 points, season high for each. They shot a combined 13 of 20 from the floor, 8 of 15 from three. And they guarded LSU's Cam Thomas and Javonte Smart, the Bayou Bengals' top offensive options, and held each to 10 of 23 from the field and a combined 5 of 15 from beyond the arc in the Wolverines' 86-78 second-round win. Florida State has the length to bother the Wolverines inside and the defensive game plan to bother them outside. Leonard Hamilton's team is 29th in the nation in defensive efficiency and has held opponents to a 39.3% field goal percentage, 32.6 from beyond the arc. In their second round win, FSU held Colorado, a team that averaged 73 points per game on almost 46% field goal shooting, 37.2 from deep, held them to 53 points on a little under 36% from the floor and 24% from three, and also forced 19 turnovers by the Buffaloes. FSU can score in the paint with Balsa Koprivka, and as the tallest team in the nation, can run multiple defenders at Wolverine star freshman center Hunter Dickinson. The Seminoles are dangerous from the perimeter. They shoot 38.2% from beyond the arc, led by senior guard MJ Walker at 43.6%, and junior guard Anthony Polite, tomato, he shoots it at 44%.
You're right on the first one, shockingly enough. That was a correct pronunciation.
FSU will have to value the ball on offense, though. If they're close to or over their season mark of 14.4 turnovers per game, then they'll be giving Michigan free possessions and potentially free points. The Wolverines only commit 11.2 turnovers per game, so we'll see how that plays out. If the Big Ten's only remaining team gets past both FSU and the likely opponent after that would be Alabama, Brooks and Brown will once again have to come up big on both sides of the ball as the best supporting actors alongside Dickinson and dynamic forward Franz Wagner. If Michigan's offense puts up another 50, 40, 80 slash line from shooting with at least 10 makes from three and 20 makes from the line, and man, the nation's number 9 team in defensive efficiency holds the Seminoles in them, the Tide, to shooting lines similar to what they allowed against LSU, which is 39%, 29%, 78%, with less than 10 makes from three and less than 20 makes from the line. I like their chances to get back to the Final Four.
I like this team a lot, and I like the way like I said, Juwan Howard's coaching has been so new age for a college basketball program. You've seen a lot of people have success because of their small school reputation coming into there, like we'll hear about in a second with Nate Oates and Alabama. But Michigan just does a damn good job at everything, and I really want to see them versus Alabama. Unfortunately, just like Florida State, UCLA is in the way of that matchup. Anthony, Alabama's basketball team is fun, exciting. It has stars on all ends, just like their football team now. They match up in talent. What do we expect as the number 2 Tide roll? See what I did there? Into their matchup Sunday versus number 11 UCLA.
Well, the Crimson Tide is actually making their first Sweet 16 performance since 2004. Knocking off Iona and Maryland respectively. While UCLA had to play the extra game. Remember, they beat Thomas of Michigan State in one of those first 4 games to get into the field of 64, and then finally knocked off BYU and another Cinderella Albany Christian to get to the Sweet 16. Look, this game is about pace. That's pretty much what it is. Alabama shoot the most 3-pointers of any team. They attempt 30.1 per game. That's the most in the country. When their shots are falling, they're virtually unbeatable. When you throw in star player Herb Jones on top of it, and they make 31%, close to 31% from the arc against Maryland in their win. Actually, they against themselves 48%, 16 of 33 from behind the arc. And you look at UCLA, they play probably one of the slowest snail paces you can possibly imagine, which is weird because Mike Cronin, when he came to UCLA, talked about playing up tempo, and they're in the 300s when it comes to tempo. This season, 337.
Is that good?
No, he basically transplanted his Cincinnati scheme to the West Coast.
Hey, it works out.
Yeah, but the difference is the 12th in the country in offensive efficiency. They shoot close to 40% from three, and they basically don't turn the ball over, which is a great chemistry for success. They don't beat themselves, which is something that Alabama is going to have to try to figure out. Look, Johnny Juzang is a 6'6" guy that Alabama has to close out as far as shooting, but what they can do as far as tackling Campbell, they can get the ball out of his hands and force someone else to try to be a playmaker. I mean, Campbell is second in the Pac-12 in assist to turnover ratio at 2.8. Look, he's a guy who can take care of the basketball, but with Alabama, they want to play up tempo, and part of playing up tempo is forcing turnovers and getting those extra possessions, which leads to more shot opportunities. So it's going to be about pacing. Can Alabama put their foot on the gas pedal and play their style of game? Okay, UCLA take it down to a snail's pace kind of game and force Alabama to be more of a half-court offense and work the ball around to get those open looks and try to keep it a low-scoring, close game, because I think that would be UCLA's best chance of an upset. Because Alabama gets hot and rolling early on with the outside shooting, this game is over before halftime.
But they are so good. They can win a 65-60 game if they want to, but that's UCLA's best chance of winning. Alabama is, I think a lot of people said, there was a fifth number one seed. Yeah. Alabama would have 100% certainly been it. There even are a lot of college Golden State Warriors vibes sometimes that I get from this team, and that shows. It's kind of the new way of the SEC. You don't need the athletes, you need the shooters, and that's why Alabama and Arkansas are here and other teams, well, are not. Guys, it's time to do a new Final Four. Men, we picked the Final Four on the last show, but I believe in second chances for all of us. All right.
Especially you.
Oh, no, trust me. But you're all going to get a chance. So who's your new Final Four to play in Indianapolis's beautiful Lucas Oil Stadium on Easter weekend? Jay, let's start with you.
Well, since three of my original Final Four picks from our preview show are still alive, I am going to continue to dance with them. However, my new fourth member is going to be the team that knocked out my previous fourth member. They come from the same state. So, yes, I am going with the Loyola of Chicago Fighting Sister Jeans. And here's the way I see it breaking down. You got Gonzaga versus Bama, Baylor versus Loyola. I think the Zags still have the easiest road to the Final Four, while I think Alabama is going to be a dangerous opponent with their number 2 ranked defense and their 3-point focused offense. I think Gonzaga just has too much firepower. So while the Tide will finally make the first Final Four in school history, their roll stops here. See what I did there. Loyola will be
me. Yes, you did a very good job.
There you go. Loyola making the Final Four again, is both a great storyline. I mean, like we said, how can you not love Sister Jean, and what she brings to that program? But I think it'll also be proof that Porter Moser has really built a terrific program in Chicago, and he deserves all the credit in the world for doing so. But I think the multifaceted Baylor offense will make the plays and the shots that the Illini did not, and escape with the W in a game that I think will go down to the final possession.
All right, Anthony, you pick that.
Rabbi, we're going to go back and forth. You want me to run straight through with my title game and my winner?
Oh, no, you can run. I didn't ask for your title game or your winner, but go ahead. Right, give me your title game and your winner. That's how we did on
the last show, so that's how I did it here. All right, my title game is Gonzaga versus Baylor. College basketball fans will be the winners here, as we finally get to see the matchup we were denied earlier in the season when both of these teams were head and shoulders above the rest of the field. Baylor has enough talent, starting with those 3 guards that Anthony talked about, to give the number 1 overall seed all it can handle. But this is the game where Naismith Trophy finalist Corey Kispert makes his case to be MOP, most outstanding player, of the Final Four by leading John Stockton's alma mater back to the national championship game. And in that scenario, I think Gonzaga will win. I think this is the best team in the field, and they practically have no holes that can truly be taken advantage of. They may not have much of a bench, but their starting five is the best in the nation, and any one of them can dominate a game. The few crew, I'll let Rabbi judge if that becomes a thing or not, came up short back in 2017, losing to North Carolina. But this year will be different. And as good as the Bears are, I just don't see them having enough to keep the little school from Spokane from cutting down the nets on April 5th.
Nope, it's not a thing. Continue, Anthony.
Well, see, three of the four teams that I picked to get to the Final Four are kind of still in it. So it's basically still the same for the most part. Gonzaga, Baylor, and Alabama. I'm going to go with Jay. Loyola Chicago is definitely going to be my fourth team. All right. And look, I mean, at this point, I'm not picking against Sister Jean whatsoever. But also, you think about the program, it's continuity. That's something you really see. I mentioned Cameron Crutwell being part of that team in 2018, now a senior, and that experience factor really coming into play now. As far as the national championship game, same two teams. I got Gonzaga and Baylor, the matchup that we thought we was going to have earlier this year, but of course, like many things in the sports world and society since last March, COVID came to play, and that matchup never happened. So I think that's going to be a national championship game. I do think Gonzaga will run the table, finish the season unbeaten since 1976, and they will be cutting down the nets.
Okay, so you guys have had these long discussions that begin with, I have three of my teams in the Final Four, so I'm not changing much. I have to change a shitload. So
yeah,
here we go. So here we go. I'm still obviously going to pick Gonzaga in their region. I do think USC or Oregon can give them a game. I think Creighton's a little overmatched for Gonzaga because, as Jay said, what Creighton does well, Gonzaga does better. So I think Gonzaga comes out of the West. I'm actually going to switch to Michigan in the East. I like what they did in the first two games. I think they would actually come in as underdogs to Alabama. I think Alabama gets to UCLA. I think we have a classic game, but I honestly think Michigan just has more size towards the end of the game, and they can find a way to take out a few Alabama players. On the flip side, I actually think Arkansas beats Baylor to win the Midwest. I actually think Arkansas can shoot the lights out on Baylor. I think Arkansas has a ton of momentum. They had their tough game versus Texas Tech. Baylor hasn't really been challenged yet. And I don't really expect Baylor to be challenged by Villanova. And I don't like a cold team going into the Elite Eight. And I have to pick Loyola of Chicago. It's more of a I don't like Houston's style pick than it is I like Loyola of Chicago. I think Loyola of Chicago is the most talented team in that region, but I think them versus Houston is going to be essentially a knife fight. But I do think the senior leadership of that team is going to lead them. I have Arkansas and Gonzaga in my national championship game, and I still have Gonzaga winning. So I decided to change things up a little bit. I want to never go with the grain anymore in my entire life because every time I go with the grain just rolls me over. So there you go. There is my new Final Four, and I'm going to burn this tape again next week once this is all done.
No, you're not, because next week when we actually talk the actual Final Four, we'll see which one of us actually came the closest.
Well, I've already had a second chance, so technically I disqualify myself, but we'll move on. On to the gridiron. Now, unfortunately, like our tournament, this hasn't been the craziest NFL free agency period ever, but there has been a ton of movement. It's not the NBA, but we'll try to do with what we have. Let's start with what the locals have done, and let's start with Gang Green. Who the hell knows where they're going with a quarterback? Fans, you could take your Deshaun Watson dream packages and throw them out the window. He's not coming here. Shut up. Let's see what's going on right now. Anthony, what's the best move that the Jets have made this offseason?
Well, it's definitely a move that didn't get a lot of attention, but I do like the signing of Carl Lawson over from Cincinnati. 3 years, $45 million deal, $30 million guarantee. 25 years old, and which is going to be important, and because you have a new 4-3 defensive scheme coming into play, which means you're going to need a pass rusher. Lawson recorded 5.5 sacks last season, a career high 32 quarterback hits, generated 38 pressures from the right side, and for his career, he has 20 sacks in 51 career games. Now you pair him up with Quentin Williams, who led the Jets in sacks with 7 on a team that only had 31 combined sacks last season, which is near the bottom of the league. Look, the Jets' biggest issue in the last few seasons has been getting to the quarterback. And one of these I harped on nonstop was the need of an edge pass rusher that the very least can get around it and force the quarterback to step into the kind of pressure that a defensive tackle like Quentin Williams can do as far as collapsing the pocket. I think Lawson, his age, and the thing is, the last time they kind of went out for a guy that was an edge pass rusher was Calvin Pace. I'm not exactly sure that's the greatest example. I see Rabbi's face like, ew. But you know what? The Jets right now, the Jets, they needed a pass rusher. They had a lot of money. They wasn't going to get someone that I'm going to mention later on, and Shaq Barrett, without giving out a ton of money. Lawson's a great pick for the amount of money, and the fact that it's a high reward, low risk signing. He's 25 years old, still kind of coming into his own. Last year was the first time he's really a full-time starter. So now in a new defensive scheme, 4-3, he will play more full-time minutes. Let's see how it goes. But it was definitely going to help the defensive scheme that emphasize a lot of pressure on the quarterback.
Man loves to hit the quarterback, though. He's had 50, I think he mentioned 54 QB hits last season. Joey Bosa only did that more among all D linemen. He loves to hit the quarterback.
Sometimes it ain't all about the sacks. It's about dirtying up the quarterback's uniform. If he's too clean, you're not getting to him.
Exactly. Jay.
The one that I'm looking at is Corey Davis, at the wide receiver position. This was the first free agency splash of the Joe Douglas era, and I wholeheartedly approve of it. Look, no, Davis is not a true number one wide receiver, but I think he will do just fine in that role for the Jets. Does that mean that the Jets will use either of their round 1 picks on a wide receiver, like maybe grabbing Alabama's Devonta Smith at number 2? I doubt it, especially since Douglas has officially said he will take calls for quarterback Sam Darnold. But when Allen Robinson returned to the Bears, the Jets GM shifted gears and grabbed a guy who was at the top of the second tier of wide receivers, who has great upside and a lower price tag than the guy their MetLife neighbors just signed at the same position. Davis was a guy we talked a lot about on our 2017 NFL draft show. Anthony thought the Titans made a bad call taking the 6'3", 209-pound Western Michigan product over Clemson's Mike Williams. And initially, that assessment seemed to be correct, as Davis struggled in his first 3 years, averaging only about 47 catches, averaging about 622 yards. That's 13-1 a catch. Only averaged 2 touchdowns per season. I agreed with Anthony that the Titans may have reached with that pick in 2017, making Davis the 5th overall pick, but I felt that he would eventually become a solid NFL wide receiver, and last season he proved me correct. 65 catches, 984 yards, that's 15 per catch. 5 TDs over 14 games. If you extrapolate that over to a full season, 74 catches, 1,125 yards, 6 TDs. He is a solid fit, and this is key, guys. He is a solid fit for new offensive coordinator Mike LaFleur's scheme, as he excels at these short to medium routes at 0 to 20 yards that are an emphasis in LaFleur's version of the West Coast offense. He caught 58 of 79 targets. He's also very short-handed. He only dropped 3 of his overall 92 targets and put up a 123.6 passer rating on the passes where he was targeted. Davis was well known for his route running at Western Michigan in 2017, a skill set that's continued to develop at the NFL level. He's likely to spend most of his snaps on the outside opposite highly touted second-year receiver Denzel Mims, who showed a very impressive ability to stretch defenses in his rookie season. Davis was 5th among wide receivers last season in yards per route when lined up outside. So he should pair well with both Mims and Jamison Crowder, who's one of the best pure slot receivers in the NFL. He's put up 137 catches, 1,532 yards and 12 scores in the 28 games he's played since joining Gang Green in 2019. Davis won't be as flashy as Kenny Golladay or make as many big splash plays, but he gives the Jets another solid, dependable wideout who, along with Crowder, will give whomever takes the snaps at quarterback, guys that he can count on to move the chains, make the plays at the second level between the linebackers and the safeties, free up Mims and Crowder to do what they do best, which will hopefully result in big splash plays by Mims and third down conversions by Crowder. All in all, solid pick, and I think he's going to be a good fit.
He didn't call himself a number one wide receiver in interviews, so that doesn't mean he's a number one wide receiver.
Hey, he's just humble. He's humble.
The wide receivers are always humble. The only one counterpoint that I'm going to say to you about him being able to get open on the slot, A.J. Brown ain't on the other side of that line. That's a guy who's had 11 touchdowns last year and has a ridiculous range and was a guy who allowed Corey Davis to
I'll tell you this, Rabbi, if Mims makes the leap from first year to second year, then I think you've got three guys with three distinct set of skills that will blend nicely together to give whoever's taking the snaps, Darnold, Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, whoever it is, going to give them a nice set of complementary receivers to throw the ball to.
Going to have to be a big leap for that to happen. And I don't know if the quarterback is coming for that.
You take it 1 year at a time.
Well, anyway, I'm going to talk about the other wide receiver that they got in free agency who Adam Schefter actually called a very sought after wide receiver because he was cheap. And that's Keelan Cole, who was a number 2 wide receiver in Jacksonville, who's probably going to play this slot a ton more and kind of be a number 3, number 4 wide receiver who I think could easily moved up. Cole was a restricted free agent last year, and Jacksonville loved him enough to place a second-round tender on him. And he delivered about as good as a year as Davis had last year, 55 catches, 642 yards, and 5 touchdowns. And all in his career, he's done 159 receptions, 2,242 yards, and 12 touchdowns. And he also serves as a part-time kick and punt returner, if you want to go that route. Cole actually brings a depth at the wide receiver position that, let's be honest, the Jets had nothing at wide receiver last year, and having 2 decent to good players in that wide receiving core will help whoever that quarterback is, whether it's Sam Darnold, whether it's Zach Wilson, whether it's Jimmy Garoppolo, whether it be whoever the heck is coming here to be there. And I think it's going to be Darnold, especially because Corey Davis had an interview on here with the understanding that Sam Darnold is the starter. Doesn't say that he thinks Sam Darnold will be the starter, because you have to say something in the media. But I really like the fact that Keelan Cole can only get better. And chances are that whoever is taking snaps for the Jets next year is going to be a better quarterback than Uncle Rico and the litany of people that were throwing to him last year in Jacksonville. He's going to get a ton of possession catches. And I think for what you're getting for 1 year and almost not even a low end wide receiver salary, and we've said this line before, and Anthony just said it, low risk, high reward. Yep. That's what you're getting with Keelan Cole. So this is going to be a very interesting year for the Jets.
Indeed.
Let's turn to the Giants. Dave Gettleman, Lord and Savior, guy who basically was criticized to hell until these last 2 weeks. Gettleman made some nice moves, especially towards the tail end of this little period that we've had. Jay, pick one of them.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking to Joe Tafaro the other day. Gettleman has had a fantastic offseason already, and we haven't even done the draft yet. So I'm looking at Kenny Golladay, the guy I mentioned in the previous segment, that the Giants signed to a 4-year, $72 million contract. This was such a great signing by the Giants, as it fills a much needed position, the number 1 wide receiver. Golladay checks all the boxes. He's got the size at 6'4", 214. The numbers, back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons in 2018 and 2019. The last 2 years he played full season, and was one of the top contested catch targets in the NFL. His ability to take the top off a secondary would seem to be, on paper, a perfect match with a quarterback in Daniel Jones, who led the NFL in passer rating on throws that went 20 yards or more downfield. Now, Golladay is coming off a hip flexor strain that limited him to only 5 games last season, but by all reports, he's fully healthy. You got to believe the Giants wouldn't have given him the contract if they felt otherwise. This will be key in improving the Giants' passing attack that ranked 28th in the NFL in efficiency. Opposing defensive coordinators will automatically have to adjust their coverages to account for Golladay, which should open things up on the opposite side of the field for both Darius Slayton and in the middle and underneath areas for Evan Ingram and Sterling Shepard. Galladay's 2,253 yards across his last 2 full seasons ranks 9th among all receivers. He averaged 16.7 yards a catch and averaged 8 touchdown grabs over those 2 seasons, with 2019 being the best of his young career, 65 catches on averaging 18 yards plus per reception, led the NFL with 11 scores. What's interesting to me, guys, are the similarities between signing Golladay to pair with Jones and the signing of Plaxico Burress to pair with Eli, who was entering his second season in 2005. Like Jones with Shepard, Ingram, and the returning Saquon Barkley, Eli had Tiki Barber, Amani Toomer, and Jeremy Shockey. And just like with Golladay, Burress was projected to be the missing piece that would take the offense to the next level. Like Golladay, Burress has the size, 6'5", 232, and his skill set made him the primary concern of defensive coordinators, creating better matchups for Toomer, Shockey, and Barber. Burress put up great numbers in his first season, led the team with 76 catches, 1,214 yards, that's 16 yards a catch, 7 touchdowns. Toomer easily transitioned into his new role as wide receiver 2 and put up a 60-catch, 684-yard, 7-touchdown season. Shockey, 65 catches, 891 yards, also 7 scores, while Barber chipped in with 54 catches for 530 yards and 2 TDs through the air out of the backfield. And Eli was a much improved quarterback and led the Giants to an 11-5 record. The rest of the comparisons are kind of eerie. Burress was 27 when he signed with the Giants. Galladay's 27. Burress had 2 1,000-yard seasons in 5 years with Pittsburgh before coming to New York. Golladay had 2 1,000-yard seasons in 4 years with the Lions before coming to New York. The Giants had a demanding coach in Tom Coughlin, who was entering his second season in 2005. Joe Judge, an equally tough coach, is coming to his second season as the Giants' head man. Eli, the number 1 pick in the 2004 draft, was entering his second season when Burress signed. Jones, the number 6 pick in the 2019 draft, is entering his 3rd season, but second in this offense. The Giants went 6-10 the season before Burress came on board. They went 6-10 last season before signing Golladay. Now, look, a lot more has to go right for history to repeat itself. Giants' offensive line became a pretty solid unit at the time Burress joined the team. The current Giants' offensive line, they got a lot to prove. The Giants still don't know if Jones will be the 2.0 version of Eli they envision him to be, or if he'll turn into Dave Brown. Who? Exactly. But getting Golladay, especially if he returns to his 2018-2019 level, is a good place to start.
Welcome to On the Sports Lines, the place where you can get your best Plaxico Burress analysis right here, right now. Don't shoot yourself in the foot, kids. Thank you very much.
You just
Anthony,
went there.
Anthony,
you just went there. Are you kidding me, Rabbi? Really?
Yes,
Okay, 2 things. For the kids who don't know who that is, you should Google Dave Brown. Trust me.
Please don't Google Dave Brown. You'll just have nightmares like I had in the mid-90s.
Yeah, okay. And number 2, by the way, Plaxico Burress fact, 17 years ago today, the Giants signed Plaxico Burress as an unrestricted free agent.
Yes.
So I just had to throw that out there. Sure. But you know what? Before this, I thought Kyle Rudolph was an overlooked signing because I think Giant fans had another Evan Ingram. But Adoree Jackson is the signing that I don't think a lot of us saw coming. And
Logan Ryan made sure it was seen coming.
Jabril Peppers, who said, "Bruh, you know what to do." You saw that tweet.
And Logan Ryan basically pulled the full court press. He basically did the Urban Meyer recruiting that he sorely misses right now in Jacksonville. So, I mean, we saw it semi coming, but to see it come together is pretty awesome.
Yeah, I mean, think about this 3-year, $39 million contract, 20 guaranteed to a guy who is a proven good defensive back, especially on the outside. Started 41 of 46 games for Tennessee. By the way, he was also part of that 2017 draft along with Davis. So there's a connection right there as far as tri-state free agents as we go. 41 of 46 games, Tennessee, knee injury, limited him last season, limited to 3 games pretty much. Since 2018, Jackson has the 4th highest coverage grade went line up to the outside, according to Pro Football Focus. And you look at that Giants defensive backfield, they are loaded.
Yep.
You already had a Pro Bowler in James Bradbury. You also had Logan Ryan. You had Jabril Peppers, Xavier McKinley at safety, and you have Darnell Holmes who can play the slot. When you look at Patrick Graham's defense and the fact that they were the number 12 defensive team in the NFL, despite really struggling and rushing the quarterback outside of Leonard Williams, who the Giants did resign, but they had to play a lot of zone. They played the most zone of any team in the league, in part because they didn't have the defensive back depth. And one of the shows that we had with Joseph Fall actually brought up to him that second defensive back position being a bit of an eyesore, because with Bradbury being a lockdown on one side, you didn't know who was the number 2 defensive back. They had injuries, they had some inconsistent play. This signing pretty much shorts every day. Now, Jackson obviously had a pass order list on as far as the checklist, for his health, far as is he able to commit, ready to come in and play. He passes all 3. The Giants added him, and like I said, initially, I was going to say Kyle Rudolph was kind of the sleeper signing because of the inconsistency with Evan Ingram at the tight end, and a short-handed Kyle Rudolph along with some more experience playing a decade in Minnesota, how that would help the Giants out, especially when they do go to the occasional 2 tight end offense. But this signing with Jackson and adding that sort of defensive backfield is going to allow Patrick Graham to be more creative as far as sending blitzes, being able to play more man-to-man coverage on the outside without having to sit in zone and play more help. I think that's going to help the pass rush especially. So this is a really just out of nowhere signing, at least in my opinion. But it's a great pickup for the New York Giants.
100%.
Three things. Number one, the Giants now possess 3 of the top 15 paid cornerback and safety backfield men in the National Football League. So it better be good. Number 2, punt returns. I think Jackson could be a big help on punt returns and kind of put somebody like Darius Slayton back into a natural role of wide receiver, and you don't have to worry too much about that position. And number 3, and the best fact that ties Jays and Anthony's together, both Galladay and Adoree Jackson canceled interviews with the Philadelphia Eagles after signing with the Giants, and to see the Eagles just crumble into an organization that no one wants to even touch. Mwah. Chefs.
Yeah, and Rabbi, the Eagles also lost out on the guy I'm going to talk about in our next segment.
The Eagles lose out on a bunch of people.
Yeah, take that, Philly. That's what you get for cost us in the division.
Damn right. All right, let's talk about Leonard Williams, a re-signing. We're going to talk about a bunch of re-signings in a few minutes, but the Cowboys, talked about them. They've been making news for taking 2 years to sign someone that they assigned a franchise tender to. For the Giants, they simply did this process in 7 days. It's unbelievable. The signing is a great signing because even though it's a huge hit, it's a $45 million guaranteed hit, 3 years, $63 million. He only costs $11 million against the cap this year. He was going to cost $19 million against the cap if you didn't do the deal. You need to get linchpins on your defense sign, and Patrick Graham's defense needed to make sure Leonard Williams was still in the fold, especially after how he performed in that last quarter of the year. He was a beast in that final game versus the Cowboys. He was very instrumental in their win over Seattle. I think Leonard Williams, who we've said needs to step up, finally did a year ago. 11 and a half sacks, 30 quarterback hits, unblocked a lot on the line last season because of the fact that a lot of people didn't really see him as a threat. He's a threat now, and he's going to open up that defensive line for more blitzing in the future, and they're going to allow the quarterback to be pressured a ton in the future. And now the Giants have their guy, a top 10 draft pick who came into his own in MetLife, just not for the team he was actually originally drafted with. He's got a bright future over here, and the best is yet to come for Williams. I think re-signing this guy and keeping him in your camp as quickly as you did is the best move that the Giants made this offseason.
The one thing I'll be interested to see, Rabbi, because now You said nobody, paid him much mind in terms of being a pass rusher. Puts up a great year. Now he's a marked man as a pass rusher. So it'll be interesting to see how he responds because offensive coordinators are going to slightly alter their blocking schemes to account for him. It's not just going to be one-on-one matchups with the tackle. He's going to get chipped by the running back. He's going to get chipped by tight ends. It'll be a question of how he responds to the double teams he's now going to expect to see. Can he defeat them? Can he come up with ways to do it? Or will Patrick Graham be able to scheme
and disguise him?
Put him in different places? Or will somebody else on the other side take advantage of that double team and have a breakout season as a pass rusher, kind of like how Bud Dupree came into his own finally to take advantage of the single coverage that he got because everything was slanted to TJ Watt. It'll be interesting to see if that shakes out that way.
Well, that's the first of a bunch of Steelers mentions on this show. But I really think for Leonard Williams, it's going to be the second. I really think that his signing, the Giants kept a ton of people in-house along with the free agent splashes that they made. As you said, Gettleman's offseason has been pretty damn good. I don't want to say perfect because
right now he's very squarely at an A grade. The draft will determine whether that grade stays there, goes to an A+ or drops down.
Yeah, and here's the thing. At the end of the day, it comes down to Daniel Jones. He's got to take that next step because everything else it becomes a moot point if the quarterback in year 3 can't take his player to another level. At the very least, make the Giants a contender to get into the postseason.
That improvement, again, does always need to start at the top. All right, let's move on. We don't want to ignore the rest of the NFL and be biased towards New York, although we can. We're based in New York. We like our New York teams. We live here, but we're not going to. We're going to talk about what the rest of the league did and pick one move, starting with me. I'm actually going to go first for once and talk about the story of this free agency. And that's the fact that the New England Patriots just went to the club and made it rain on every free agent that we thought that was possible. Not going to mention the money because a lot of people have talked about, look who they kept. Let's start who they kept. They kept James White, a guy who is primed for a bounce back season in the running back position. Center David Andrews is still in the fold. Kicker Nick Foles. Both Cody and Carl Davis had Justin Bethel. And then who did Bill Belichick bring in? Leroy Reynolds from Cincinnati, who's a special teams contribution member. Kyle Van Noy, a linebacker corps, was depleted in 2020. His third down presence is going to be a very welcome one. Ted Karras, a veteran option into replacing their former center Andrews. Henry Anderson, wide receiver Kendrick Bourne, 49 catches, 669 yards, and 2 touchdowns in San Francisco. He's only 26. You have Nelson Aguilar, who finally broke out of his I drop everything in Philadelphia phase and had 48 catches for 8 touchdowns this year for Las Vegas. Matt Judon, who has 34.5 sacks since being selected in 2016's 5th round.
For the Ravens on that one.
Huge loss of the Ravens. Jalen Mills, Trent Brown, offensive tackle for the Raiders. They made so many good moves. The 2 moves that I'm going to focus on. Look at the tight end from the Titans, Jonnu Smith. He's 25 years old, and he has become a threat, especially in the red zone. 41 catches, 8 touchdowns last year. The Patriots, who have been known to throw the ball to the touchdowns a time or two, saw their best tight end option catching touchdowns in the Super Bowl for Tampa Bay from Tom Brady. But now you have Jonnu Smith. He was the first big one of the first big offensive signings. But then you add Hunter Henry, a guy who's played his entire career with the Chargers, learning under the feet of Antonio Gates. He's pretty much a pass catcher in my book. He's always gone for 500 yards every season, is even more of a red zone threat than Smith is. And I have to say, as long as he can stay healthy, this team has a loaded team. The only question is, who's going to be throwing the balls this year? And what will Cam Newton do in his second year with the Patriots? A lot of people were kind of surprised that the Patriots re-signed him, but as an organizational leader, the Patriots love Cam. The next question is, what do they do in the draft? Is the New England Patriots' next quarterback right now on their roster? Probably not. And the questions will remain. It's one of the big questions as we go into April and the draft itself. All right. You two can talk now too. Jay, let's talk about Juju.
And honestly, the reason that we're even talking about it is because absolutely no one in either an NFL personnel role or a media role saw Juju Smith-Schuster returning to the Steelers. Everyone, myself included, was 100% certain, would have bet the farm on it, that Juju would be wearing different colors in 2021. With the Steelers having practically no salary cap room to give Smith-Schuster the mega contract he expected to command in free agency, he reportedly was telling teammates that it was unlikely he would return. The market for a wide receiver of Juju's caliber was projected to be at least in the $11.5 million per year neighborhood that Curtis Samuel got from Washington. But when there turned out to be no houses in that neighborhood, Juju decided to come home, turning down similar or larger offers from other teams like the Ravens, the Eagles, and the Chiefs, agreeing to a 1-year, $8 million deal with voidable years that will push some of Smith-Schuster's cap hit in the form of dead money into the future, when fans in the stands, the new TV deals, and a 17th game will increase league revenues and in turn bring the salary cap back up to pre-COVID levels. The contract has a $1 million base salary, a $7 million signing bonus, and 4 voidable years. So his 2021 cap hit is just $2.4 million. The Steelers will be in better shape to eat his cap hit in 2022. And by then, it's possible he's negotiated a long-term deal with the team, making him only the 3rd receiver in the Tomlin-Colbert era to get a full second contract behind Hines Ward and Mr. Brown. Or they'll use the franchise tag on him. What his return means for the Steelers is that wide receiver room returns intact, with Juju as the number 1 receiver and the leader of a deep group that includes Deontay Johnson, James Washington, and rookie sensation Chase Claypool. Juju spent a large part of last season in the slot. He caught 97 balls to lead the team, and he scored a career-high 9 touchdowns, but he only averaged 8.6 yards per catch, a career low. It's very possible that his role could expand in new offensive coordinator Matt Canada's scheme, putting him in more positions to be the type of playmaker he was in his 2018 Pro Bowl season. The one thing we do know for sure is that Ben Roethlisberger is ecstatic to have his favorite wideout back in the fold. Smith-Schuster's return allows the Steelers to pivot from possibly taking a wide receiver with an early round draft pick to focusing on other positions that have more of a need, like running back, offensive line, and now with the unexpected cutting of Steven Nelson, cornerback. All of Steeler Nation says thank you very much and welcome home.
And as an LSU person, I think Matt Canada will be just fine as offensive coordinator. He hasn't really had the best talent to work with over there. Matt Roethlisberger is no Danny Etling. All right, Anthony, let's finish off this segment with you.
Yeah, well, we'll get back to Juju for a second. I know it's a shock that he be signed with the Steelers, but you gotta forget, he's a big anime fan. Maybe it was the 1-year subscription to Crunchyroll and he no TikToking before games clause in his contract.
There's definitely going to be a clause like that. Coach Tomlin is not going to put up with those antics. Time and a place for everything, young man.
Okay, well, for me, the defending Super Bowl champions, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and that's bringing Shaq Barrett back into the fold. I mean, look, I think a lot of people got nervous when they franchise tagged Chris Godwin, the wide receiver, and immediately we signed Levante David, and a lot of people just thought, well, what are they going to do about Shaq Barrett? Can they get a deal done? Were they able to do that? I mean, without question. And look at this postseason run last year. 3 sacks in the NFC Championship game, a sack, and 4 hits on Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl. That by itself is enough for a big payday. But then you think of it like this. 2 years ago, 19.5 sacks in 2019 to lead the NFL in sacks, 41.5 sacks, 15 forced fumbles, 266 tackles, and 92 regular season games over the course of 7 seasons. Hey, look, without question, this was something the Tampa Bay Buccaneers had to do to kind of keep Barrett in the fold. But now you look at the rest of the team. They're bringing back Gronk. They're bringing back Sue. They're pretty much bringing back the guys that helped them win the Super Bowl. Question of whether or not Antonio Brown and Leonard Fournette is back into the fold also, because it's a case of let's run it back. We won the Super Bowl. Let's keep the band together. Let's do it again in year 2. It's something Tom Brady's very happy about. Bruce Arians certainly is a happy man right now. And look, the way things are looking, the way they played last season, think about this. They were 7-5 at one point.
Yep.
And not looked at as a team in a good team in their own division, let alone to come out and win 3 road games. Remember, they went to Washington, they went to New Orleans, they went to Green Bay to get to the Super Bowl and to literally manhandle the best offense we've seen since maybe the St. Louis Rams of the greatest show and tell era. And now you look at it like this, a year or 2, more expectations. They're not sticking up on anybody this time around. Hey, look, wouldn't be surprised if Tom Brady's drunkenly throwing another Vince Lombardi trophy from one boat to another next January. But we should wait and see. But no, it's Shaq Barrett. This was a move that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers had to make. They had to get it done. They were able to do it. Now it's full speed ahead towards a repeat.
Hey, Rabbi, it's been a pretty interesting free agency period for University of Southern California alums. Aguilar, Juju, Dory Jackson. So far, former Trojans have made out pretty well in free agency this year.
I didn't even realize. I forgot the fact that they were Trojans in there. But by the way, the Bucks, beware the fool's gold of the year beforehand, because there seemed to be a lot of problems with that team going into that run. But excellent free agency for a ton of teams out there. It's going to be a very interesting draft season as we get closer and closer to that, which is just a little over a month.
By the way, there will be a live draft this year.
There will be a live draft this year.
Fun with seeing Roger Goodell in his own living room doing it virtually. It'll be great to see, the live reactions and some fans in the stands. So, and you know what? Cleveland is the site of draft. Ohio Pro Football Hall of Fame, obviously, down the road. So you know what? We're getting close to some kind of normalcy again. So this is a great start.
Oh, and Rabbi Joe has already RSVP'd for the draft show. He's good to go.
We're programming for April now. All of this.
There we go.
I don't like to say the word "you kids," but I'm going to end this show on a little bit of a note, and you guys can jump in when you want to. We lost the great Elgin Baylor this week, one of the best basketball players ever, probably one of the most underrated players. Kids out there don't know what he did. He averaged 27.4 points and 13.5 rebounds in this game. Yeah. Wilt Chamberlain was the only one to do that in his entire career. But 1961, 1962, 38.3 points, 18.6 rebounds per game. It's an amazing stat, and more amazing when you realize that he was away from his team while on active duty in the Army on weekends that year. His career is amazing. He never won a title, because that year when he was away from his team was the year that they won the title. 11-time All-Star, Hall of Famer with the Lakers, one of the many basketball players back in the day that was basically submitted to racism and bigotry, and wasn't one of the reasons why his team boycotted a game in Charleston, West Virginia after a hotel would tell him that him and his black teammates can't stay there. Baylor had an impact politically, socially, and as a player is one of the 20 most influential players in the game. If you never saw Elgin Baylor play, he was as dominant as anybody out there. The world is a worse place now that he has passed on, dying of old age, of natural causes this week at the age of 86.
Yeah, I mean, Rabbi, it's funny. I mean, you think about the Lakers, who, along with the Celtics, are considered the flagship franchises of the NBA. And you think of all of the legends that have worn the purple and gold throughout their history. I mean, you can start back when, even before they came to LA and they were in Minneapolis, that line starts, that legacy starts with George Mikan and goes all the way up through, to Kobe. And then once he's retired, it'll be LeBron. But Elgin Baylor is sometimes the forgotten legend of the Lakers in that Lakers pantheon, solely because of his era overlapping Wilt Chamberlain, Jerry West, Gail Goodrich, and some of the other guys who have worn the Laker uniform. But if you look up his numbers, and if you ever get a chance to see clips of him play, you were right, Rabbi. He was, to put up 27 and 13 as an average from the small forward position, not the power forward position, the small forward position. He was without a doubt one of the most dominant players at that position. Basically was one of the guys who basically created that, what that position entailed and was supposed to be. So, and he went on to be in a front office position with the Clippers afterwards, ironically, across town, but and didn't have as much success, obviously, as a front office guy as he did.
Why I didn't mention it in
but you got to remember, Rabbi, he was one of the first African American front office executives who was in a major decision-making position. And at the time when he moved up into that position, there weren't that many, He was kind of a trendsetter in that regard. So he's done a lot. He did a lot for the NBA, both on and off the floor. And his legend should be celebrated. And you're right. The world, not just the basketball world, but the world is a little bit less brighter, without his star shining.
You mentioned his time with the Clippers, 22 seasons, actually. He was named NBA top executive in 2006. The Clippers had a great season, were one game away from reaching the conference finals. Obviously, it's a plateau they haven't quite reached it yet. But you think about it, they only had the 4 postseason appearances on that time, but there were some talented players that played on that team. You think about guys that contribute later on to other championship teams. Lamar Odom was a guy that comes to mind. Sam Cassell was a big player on that 2006 team that kind of came out of nowhere and was really good. And a current NBA coach, Doc Rivers, played for the Clippers in 1992. A team that also made the playoffs that season with Ron Harper, who contributed to the Chicago Bulls championship success a few years later. But his time at the Clippers didn't end well. He actually ended up suing the team. And the lawsuit alleging that Donald Sterling ran kind of a southern plantation type structure, and it became a foreshadow of what we would learn 3 years later about Donald Sterling, as far as what was going on behind the scenes with the organization, and obviously leading to Donald Sterling's lifetime ban from the NBA. Look, Elgin Baylor's his legacy, I think, like Jay said, they kind of get lost because you think about the Lakers. There's so many legendary players that have played for this organization, whether they were drafted or even traded for on draft night, in the case of the late great Kobe Bryant, or they came later on, they were able to contribute to the championship in the form of LeBron James, or maybe a player in a prime in form of Anthony Davis. But you know what I tell kids today, when they look at the Lakers and they think of purple or gold, and they get kind of confused with the blue and the white, which was the original Minneapolis Lakers colors, and they actually kept the colors the first few seasons in Los Angeles. I bring it up that Mike didn't play with that, but Elgin Baylor was one of really the first players who played for the LA Lakers who wore those colors. It's great to see the Lakers honoring Baylor on their throwback uniforms for the rest of the season. They have his signature at the bottom of the uniform. So he would be greatly missed without question. But I hope that now we get to appreciate what he left on and off the court as far as his legacy.
And he made the game more exciting. As Bob Ryan said, he made the game vertical and diagonal in a game that was kind of stagnant sometimes, going horizontal from place to place. All right. So that ends it for another edition of On the Sports Lines. We have a lot of social media. That's what they tell me. We go live every week at facebook.com/On the Sports Lines. We're always on demand for any shows that you might have missed in our vast library of knowledge at youtube.com/On the Sports Lines. Take it away, Jay.
It's where you can follow us on Twitter, where links to this show get regularly posted, along with other fascinating content if the spirit moves either one of us. ONTH Sports Lines with the app in front of it.
Fascinating. That's something that I really have to live up to now, and don't lie to them. Anyway, we will be back.
Live up to it now.
It is true. We'll be back next week, guys. I hear baseball's back. It's very exciting. 1 week till opening day.
Wait, Rabbi, you're not going to pull an April Fool's on us, right? Because next Thursday, opening day, April Fool's. We are doing baseball, right?
We'll talk about that later. Anyway, until then, my name is Stephen Rabinowitz, and along with Jay Kaplan and Anthony Strait, this is On the Sports Lines. Good night.
Good night, everyone.